Everyone, welcome to our Facebook Live Confident Conversations. Now, if you want to get ahead in any career or share an issue that's important to you, you have to be able to get your message across to other people and do it in a way that is authentic and connects with them. Now, you may be petrified to stand up on stage or even at the front of your conference room in front of your company to get your message heard. And that is why I am so pleased today to welcome my amazing, talented guest, Michelle Barry Franco. Michelle is a speaker, she's an author, and she's a public speaking coach. And Michelle is on a mission. She's on a mission to help you amplify your voice, to do more good in our world. And at the heart of Michelle's mission, I love so much because she has this fundamental belief that there is no more powerful way to make a meaningful difference in the lives of many people at once than through the kind of authentic, powerful public speaking that she helps people do. I'm Melissa Hereford, founder of Negotiate with Confidence, and I'm so pleased to welcome you today, Michelle.
Yay, me too. I'm so excited to be here. I've been excitedly awaiting our conversation. I love talking with you anytime. And that we get to do it in service of others, I love even more. So thanks.
Yes. Well, that's a great place to start, Michelle.
Yeah.
Talk to us about this idea of service to others, because when you and I started working together, and I've taken Michelle's class, Your Rooftop Message, which she'll tell you about in a few minutes. And Michelle, you really changed the way that I thought about speaking. So like so many people, I would get a little nervous before I went on stage or when I was preparing my message, what am I going to talk about? And you totally transformed the way that I thought about public speaking. So tell us a little bit about this idea of yours of service to others.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that because I know I'm So I'm going to tell you a little story about how I got to that deep realization for myself, because I really had to get there. I mean, I started my business back in 2008. I was a communication consultant coach. I didn't quite know what I was supposed to be, and I didn't know what to call myself. Oh, I'm wondering, are we frozen? You look frozen.
No.
Do I look frozen?
No, you're good. You're good. Keep going. It's okay.
Uh-oh. I said this probably wouldn't happen, but it might be happening.
I guess if
I'm
Michelle
good. Okay,
is frozen.
You're frozen, but I hear I'm not frozen. So
okay, good.
I'll just
keep
talking. So back in 2008, I started my business, and didn't quite know what I wanted to do. It was more like I was getting a degree, a counseling degree, and realized I didn't need it. I'm like, communication's the thing. It's all about self-expression. Like I had that deep realization. Mm-hmm. But what I did know, even though I had been teaching public speaking in college for years at the time, quite a few, maybe 8 years or so at the time, I said, I'm not going to be a speaking coach, because I had this whole idea that speakers love the spotlight and it was all about them, and that I didn't want to be working with people. I know that sounds so mean, and it always kind of like makes my tummy upset when I think about that I had this perspective, but that, speakers were all about themselves. And so it took me like years to be willing to call myself a speaking coach, until I had the realization that the great speakers, the speakers I love that had changed my life over and over and that I feel like made the biggest difference in the world, actually are all about service, that their messages were about changing other people's lives and serving other people. And so it was once I had that realization that I was able to actually step into my own clear message around speaking. And so that's really where it starts. But I believe we make that just what you said, there really is no more powerful way to make a difference for a lot of people all at once. And I realized that like back in high school when I started speaking, although I wasn't thinking of it that way. So the only problem is I can't hear you.
She can't hear me.
So when you ask me a question, I'm going to try another approach
this is
here.
Live, people. This is live drama happening right now. What I want to ask Michelle, and hopefully she'll be able to hear me, we may need to sign off and sign back in order to make this happen, is a question about my own experience.
I'm so sorry. I think it's my internet connection that is not working.
Okay, people, we might need to end and come back in a few minutes. It looks like Serena can hear both
Serena's saying, I can hear both of you. I wish I could hear Melissa. So I'm going to... I can't hear her, so I can't get her questions. So I was just thinking if I can play it on here. I don't know why mine's stuck.
My experience with...
I don't know what happens either, but I'm trying it on my... So sorry, Melissa. It's totally frozen, so I can't hear your response.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we try
But I'm going to go to negotiate with confidence and see if I can go to the app. Okay, type your questions. That's a great strategy because I have my phone that I can see.
Okay, so let's see. My question here is about...
Is it still playing on there? Maybe.
Yeah, there's like a 10-second delay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just screw you up if I bring mine in.
Yeah.
So you guys are getting the live action. Lisa can hear both of us as well. I'm going to suggest that Michelle sign out.
But I'm not seeing any questions.
And then sign back in.
Do you? Okay, why don't you just tell me her questions? We are improvising beautifully.
And Susan says, you look great. Keep smiling.
Next question.
There's no questions. People are saying I can hear both of you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to...
Oh, here.
I told Michelle to sign out and sign back in. And then I can talk about my experience learning how to approach public speaking from...
I don't know if this is going to work with, because I have it showing.
Michelle, sign out.
Okay, let me try signing out and signing back in.
Okay, good. While Michelle is gone for a few minutes, I want to tell you guys the story of how I came to see public speaking as a service. Now imagine yourself walking into a room and you've got maybe 50, 60, 100 people waiting for you to talk. And you look out into the audience and you think, oh my God, they're judging me. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to say the wrong thing. And that is where our fear comes from, is this fear of being judged, this fear that we're going to say the wrong thing, this fear that we won't be able to fix if we forget something, that we won't be able to recover if something goes wrong. And all those people out in the audience are sitting there looking at me, waiting for me to say something brilliant. And you get frozen. Okay, so now imagine that you walk into the room and you look out at that 50, 60, 100 people and you think, I know something that will help them in their lives. And it was that shift when I started talking to people and people would say to me, oh my God, what you just told me is going to change the way I think about this. It's going to change the way I show up in the world. That's what I think when I look out into the audience now. And it's because of Michelle that I started thinking that way. That when I look out into the audience, I think these women, and usually it's women, although a lot of the women's leadership programs that I teach now bring men into the room as well, are looking at me and hoping that I can say something that will make their lives better. And that's the fundamental core of Michelle's message and how you change the way that I think about speaking in front of other people. Even if you're speaking about something like logistics or getting agreement on a project, if you are doing a project team meeting in front of a group in a conference room, even something that simple, by having a clear message and by having a clear path forward, it seems like, well, it's just a project plan. But by having a great message and a great way to communicate it, that project plan is going to change. Everybody in the room is going to have a better experience and it's going to change their lives because they're not going to be late and they're not going to be confused. And so a clear message comes across in everything that you do.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Michelle.
Hi. That was so awesome. Talk about totally like being of service, which of course you are, because you, I think, have always come from that perspective. It's probably why it resonates so strong. I mean, you've always sort of like had that, but maybe just didn't have it articulated, right? Like, oh yeah. It makes it so much.
It was thanks to you. Give us a little heart if you love. If you've worked with Michelle, I recognize a few of the viewers who are on live with us, and I know that you guys have heard Michelle talk about this before. So give us some love if you're on live.
You guys are awesome. I can see the comments. It's so fun. Yeah, being real is right. So hopefully I get to
This is great.
stick around.
Susan says a perfect example of how speakers need to think on your feet. Great job rolling with the flow. Thanks, Susan.
And that was awesome, Melissa. I mean, it was just so fun to actually pop back in and just hear what you were in the middle of picking up from there. But really, you know what, though? That is the thing, right? That's the fundamental thing. If I feel like the only reason I can be a speaker, honestly, and I think this is true for a good portion, though definitely not all of my clients, is because I believe that, because I believe it's not about me. Something in me just needs that to be, the reason that I'm getting in the spotlight and really taking up so many people's time. You can definitely, I can have that perspective unless I am crystal clear that I'm being of service to the people in the room.
Yeah. So Michelle, you talk a lot about fear, of course, because people say that public speaking is definitely in the top 3 or 4 of people's fears. So one way that we can get over our fears is to think about being in the service of others. But I know you have a lot of other things that you teach about fear and how to move through that fear to get on stage. So give us a few more tips about how you help people do that.
How to just deal with the fear. Is that? Yeah. Well, my favorite, ask my daughters, because I say it probably every day at least, like, oh, seems like it's time for a belly breath.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like just because fear, exactly. Like now's a good time for a belly breath, actually. Good point.
Yeah.
But
technical problems.
Yeah, exactly. When technical problems happen, and there are varying kinds, right? When you're online, which is the way a lot of speaking is done now, you have different challenges. If you're standing in front of a room full of people, but all of them, you need to the first thing you need to do is manage what's going on in your head and what's going on in your body. Mm-hmm. Because the truth is that as long as you're okay, they're okay. But we have to know how to be okay in those moments, right? So my very first strategy, and the one I use regularly all the time, is belly breathing. And actually that is a practice in itself, because most of the time we are chest breathers.
Yes.
Especially those of us who don't have, yoga practices, and there is some chest breathing, as I understand it, that can be done in calming ways. But generally speaking, that when we breathe faster into our chest, it leads toward more anxiety, hyperventilation, kind of thing. So my favorite is belly breathing. And then my second favorite is really thought work practices. So I use daily thought work.
What is that? Tell us a little bit more about that.
It's really recognizing that what we're thinking there's some debate about this, and I even go back and forth, but I think it's okay still we can look at it both directions. What we're thinking often causes us to feel things. Sometimes it might feel like vice versa, right? But then that causes our actions.
Yes.
So if we can go, okay, I'm feeling stuck or scared, or like, I'm not doing what I say I want to do. I'm not offering to speak on these stages that I know I would be of amazing service. What is the thought that's getting in the way of me just like making that connection? Mm-hmm. And then when we can name that thought, and we can and there's different, I have a practice that I call the if today practice. And actually it's what saved my whole business and life in that, in a way.
Well, you have to share it with us, Michelle.
I will share it with you. Yeah, I know. It's just life-saving. So actually, I have it as a process, a freebie on my website. So you can click in fact, I can give you the, I have to make a note, but if today practice. But it's basically thought work combined with movement. And that was really, I had this period, and I did it for about 8 months every single day. It was a daily practice. And that is how I went from not speaking, not telling my stories. I was working with great clients, but I had this sort of sudden realization that I wasn't doing any of the things I was telling them every day that they needed to do to serve the world. So I had one of those like deep, 3:30 a.m. Moments. And so I would say the fear, I think daily practices and then in the moment practices are my two favorites. So if you make it a daily practice to sort of work with the thoughts that might be causing regular fear, and then in the moment, there's of course the breathing, there's the belly breathing, but then there's really specific ones, like you're about to go on stage and there's this period of time. In fact, I just was at TEDx Bend. And I'm a speaker coach for TEDx been? So I had a couple of speakers who were going on stage after a tremendous amount of work. There is no prep like TEDx or TED Talks.
Wow.
So there's a lot of anticipation in that period right before. And I was talking with my speakers in the green room in the back, just saying like, this is the hardest part right now. Like you're about to get on that stage and everything you've prepared for is going to flow forth, but you're in the trust phase. It's like trust and release, trust and release.
And breathe.
And breathe,
okay,
yes.
I had this very embarrassing situation that I'm going to share with everybody about breathing. And you can take my experience and you can learn from it, because Michelle taught me to breathe deeply. And when I did my very first live webinar, where I had, I don't know, 50 or 60 people that I didn't know, they weren't my friends. They were just people that wanted to hear what I had to say.
Yep.
Signing into the webinar, and the webinar was counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I took a deep breath when it was at 2, not realizing that it had already gone live.
That's awesome.
And I didn't know it until I watched the recording afterwards. And I was like, oh, lovely. So then all these people are going to watch the recording, because you get a link to the replay when you sign up for the webinar, and you can't edit the recording. So I was just like, well, just own it. So be aware of where your microphone is and whether or not it's turned on when you take your deep belly breath.
You know what I love about that though, Melissa, given what your topic is, right? I mean, really so much of what you and I talk about is similar. You're talking about intense emotions often, especially if you're in an actual negotiation, like a lot of different negotiations. You talk about all the way from relational to like money, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Oftentimes it's these difficult conversations. And so in a way, you were just modeling what needs to be done in your circumstances as well, right? Like breathe, and then you can speak from a place of clarity or...
Yes, exactly. It does clear your mind. So that's great advice from Michelle, is to take a deep belly breath and practice your belly breath in advance, and then know whether or not your microphone is turned on. For me, your tip from Melissa.
I love that story. That's awesome.
So those are great. I think were you gonna tell us one more thing? You said about how to move through scary things. One was the belly breath. The other was serving others.
To move through scary things. Well, okay. So what I would say, you mean if you are wanting to get out there and speak and you're nervous?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So definitely the belly breathing and the thought work. So, and then maybe I was going to say one more beyond that. There are a lot. I have a whole sheet of them. If you want that, I'm happy to share it. So it's just, there are all different strategies. There's visualization, for example, just seeing yourself being successful. It's amazing. Once we start to do thought work, well, it's probably 85% thought and body work, I would say. You need to know best practices, right? And so that is what I teach. I teach the best practices. You can buy a book, you can, do an online course, but really most of what we need to do is really learn how to move through the thoughts that get in the way. And some of that is around just seeing yourself be successful, because we don't even realize how often we're playing scenes of us being unsuccessful.
Right. That's so true. Yeah. There's a saying that I use all the time called thoughts become things.
Yeah.
That's really easy to remember. In fact, I have it.
Yeah, I like that.
I have it taped up right on the... I've had it taped up on the side of my computer for probably 5 years to remind me that what I think is manifested.
Yeah.
And one of my previous guests, Lisa, talked about, she's the body language expert. She talked about this tip that I love, which is think of 3 adjectives that you want people to walk away with about you after the experience. And that helps to shift your thinking. I want people to see me as authentic. I want people to see me as real. I want people to see me as confident. And just that little exercise helps to shift your thinking as well.
Yeah.
Have that on your list, you can add it. I asked her, she said it was fine for us to use it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's perfect. In fact, I have a process that I do sometimes with groups that's similar. I call it your expression Elan, and it has a little different feel, but it's a similar thing, because I agree with Lisa that when we create positive labels for ourselves, it guides us to act into those labels, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like we have that self-fulfilling prophecy, and they say, don't label children, right? Because we don't want to negatively label children when they're young, because then they will just live into it because of the labels. Well, it's actually true in the opposite too, right? If you give yourself 3 words that feel awesome to you, and then you give yourself some guidance around how to act into that. What does it mean to be these things?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a little bit of a path forward, some specific actions that you can take.
Yeah. I remember when my son was little and he was scared, he was going to camp, and I had read something about this idea, and he said, I'm nervous, Mom, I'm not going to make any friends. And I said, what do you mean? You're really good at making friends. And it was kind of that opposite label of saying, you're really good at this thing. And I actually had the chance to repeat that with one of his friends the other day. Who said, I'm a little nervous about going to high school because I'm not good at making friends. And then they went on to tell me this whole story about how they had moved multiple times. And I said, well, you came to this school only 2 years ago and you have really good friends already. So it seems to me like you're really good at making friends. And they thought about it and said, I guess maybe I am good at making friends. And that shift of looking at the actual data versus the way that we may have thought about ourselves in the past is pretty powerful. And you're so good at doing that. And I want to transition a little bit into your rooftop message, because this program that you teach that I took is so different. And you talk about the service of others, which is really powerful, but you also talk about taking a stand for something that matters through public speaking. So I know that a lot of people who are going to be watching this feel very passionately about things in their lives. And they feel maybe it's about gun control or school, the lunches at your school, or, anything in between. There are things that we feel passionate about. And I'd like to know a little bit more about how you teach that, owning and living and then speaking about things that are powerful and important.
Well, I have to we have to do your rooftop message.
Tell us about
process, that. Right? So, or just the question. So I know you know this, but actually I think it's really useful for us to do it over and over again in our lives as we're sharing our message. So, here's what I invite people to do, because a lot of times people are like, I know my topic area, but I don't really know what I'd want to take a stand for exactly. So I give this scenario. Okay. Imagine you're in a little town. The streets are full of people. And everybody's like chaotic. And, they're all talking to each other and they're struggling. And you're standing amongst them and you're saying, and you're like, I can help you. I can totally help you with this. But they can't hear you because they're all talking and you're just one person in the midst of all this chaos. But you see this ladder up against a building, and so you walk over to the ladder and you walk up, and the rooftop is reasonably safe. So you stand on the rooftop and you cup your hands around your mouth and you shout, listen to me, beautiful people. Here's what you need to know to make your lives better. What would you say?
Wow. I bet that's a really interesting process for people to go through. What are their typical responses when you do that?
Similar to, the first oh, but I'm, and then they're like, what would I say? And then they, the beauty, I think, of this question and then the response it elicits is, you don't have to have it perfectly buttoned up, because you're amongst all these people. You just want to serve. So you get up on the rooftop and you just do the best you can on the spot, right? Yeah. So there's just this opportunity to try, but you're passionate. You've already climbed up there for a reason. So people usually are like, wow, well, what I'd want to say is, and then they just say a couple sentences, I'd want to say, it doesn't have to be like this. If you just, if you just made sure you got 8 hours of sleep every night, you would be amazed at how your life would change. And then when we ask the next question, which makes it even tighter and more relevant, which is, who is on those streets, right? So let's say those streets are full of new parents. So that, right? Tricky.
8 hours of sleep.
I know, right? So, maybe they wouldn't be saying 8 hours of sleep then. Maybe they're a sleep expert and it's new parents. So they're like, okay, it's unrealistic to say 8, hours in a row. But so maybe now that we know that it's this parents that they're going to serve, they'd get up on the rooftop and say, listen to me, beautiful parents. Here's what you need to know. I know that it's really hard to get your sleep in. And I also know that your whole life will change when you figure out how to get more sleep in. And I can help you do that. Now, I know all across the land, people are like coming toward this very idea. Like, really? Is there an answer to this? So let's go find that sleep expert. Actually, I do.
I'm not even a new parent, and I can use that advice, please.
I know, me too. Maybe that's why I'm talking about it, actually. But, then assumedly this person would have an answer to this question of how do you get more sleep as a new parent? And there are ways. I know there are, because I've worked with parenting experts. But but you alter that message based on who is on those streets.
Yeah, I love that approach. It's so different from any other public speaking events or approach that I've heard. And what is the transformation like for people when they start to think about, like, I think I have something to say, or I think I need to be able to speak? Because in so many jobs and careers, the way to get more exposure to who you are and what you're working on and what your message is to be able to make those kinds of speeches. So what's the typical transformation that people go through? I'm just really curious to hear how people experience what you're teaching, because it is such a different approach, which I love, by the way.
Yes, thank you very much. Usually there's, of course, I guess it's like a lot of new ideas, right? So I haven't thought about this before. So I'm just kind of like thinking about it as you're asking it. I think there's this whole, I don't know what I want to say. I don't have it, I'm like in confusion and frustration, which of course makes them seek out a solution, which is why they're talking with me. But then, so they get this question, and it is very organizing. It is. I'm continually struck and grateful for whatever divine, download came to me when that scenario came, because people are like, oh my gosh, okay, this is what I want to say, and this is who is on the streets, and there's this excited period. I can do this. I know what I want to say, which is actually really, really powerful. But of course, like many things, it goes like, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride. Okay, now I got to figure out how I'm going to say it. Who do I want to say it to? But what's beautiful about that, so there's still work to do, right? There's still the crafting of the talk, as you know. There's the crafting of the talk. There's the practicing the talk. But now you know what it's about, and you know what it's on behalf of. And I think the driver, like the engine of service, like I really want to serve those people on those streets, is a powerful reminder for people.
Yeah. It really does totally shift the way that you think about speaking in front of other people when you come at it from that angle.
Yeah.
And makes it less about me and more about you. I mean, I am just, like you said, the vessel that the message is coming through.
Yeah.
And then being able to deliver that message in a way that's clear and concise and really, we always talk about the what's in it for me or what's in it for them. Really does approach it from the what's in it for them perspective.
Yeah. And I would imagine, because I think in your community, you probably have some people who are entrepreneurs and doing their own business building thing, and some people who are in companies, right? And so I think oftentimes people will wonder, well, I work inside of a company. I don't get to choose my rooftop message, or I don't get to. And I do training for, I've done presentation skills training for the Federal Reserve Bank, for insurance companies. And while we don't necessarily approach it in exactly the same way, they're not necessarily always compelled to get on the rooftop, but their job just sort of puts them on that rooftop. This fundamental shift around I am to be of service as a speaker works in every single domain. It works in every topic area.
I could see that. And if you guys want to read more about Michelle's approach, she is an author of a book called Beyond Applause. And actually, wait a minute. Live action shot. It's right here, people, right here, Beyond Applause. It's a beautiful orange. And Michelle's book is really powerful. It's about making a meaningful difference through transformational speaking. And I'm not trying to sell y'all on anything. I'm trying to help y'all because, we have to be able to clearly get our message across in so many parts of our lives. Now, Michelle also has Your Rooftop Message coming up soon. And I put the link on the screen. So if you want to learn more about it, you can go to her website and go to the link that's on the page here and find more about Your Rooftop Message. Michelle, do you want to say anything about that class? I don't want this to be like a commercial, but I do definitely want people to know about it, because I took the class and it helped move me from during a time in my life when I knew that I needed to get out there and speak, because I was so motivated to help women find their voices. I needed to be able to share my own voice, and I needed to be able to do it in a way that empowered them quickly and concisely. And you really helped me to make that transition mentally and with the actual words that I used.
And you're such a freaking rock star, as I told you many times then, and I would say now. Really, I mean, I'm glad. I'm honored that I got to be a part of getting you out there sharing this message, because as you know, I mean, I've always felt like your message is so powerful and it is so needed. So I love that, being part of your Rooftop Message Talk program was a part of that. We start April 16th. I'll just say that. So if it's something that, that anyone who is watching this is looking for, then check it out before then and just see if it's a good fit. Happy to answer any questions.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would encourage you guys to check it out. And we're at 30 minutes now, which is a little bit longer than we normally go, but it's okay because we had a little technical glitch that everybody got to enjoy. We got some really positive comments from people, which was awesome. And looks like Lisa. Well, look, Lisa is joining your class. This is great. Lisa, you're going to love it. It's amazing. And we got some really awesome comments during our little technical glitch.
Thanks all so much.
Saying, hey, it's just real. That's just what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's Facebook Live. That's actually why we sign on to Facebook Live, because we want to see people doing embarrassing things when they're live, because you don't get that when you record things in advance, right? So I want to thank you, Michelle. You gave us some great tips for mastering our mindset, which is really the most important thing when it comes to public speaking. You also talk a lot about claiming your own stories and writing down your stories. And that's really powerful for people as well. If you're going through any kind of transition or places where you need to, come to accept and love the version of you today. Yeah. Oftentimes we look into our past and don't see who we are really and how amazing we are without going through some kind of process to own those stories.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah,
thank you for saying that.
You're so good at helping to bring that out in other people.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, Michelle. Thanks so much for hanging with it, making it happen, and sharing your beautiful voice and your wisdom with us today. And thanks everybody for joining us live. And if you're watching us recorded, I hope you enjoyed the drama.
The side of my face as I'm like, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sticking with Michelle. It. Okay, take care.